Today, we're going to be diving into advanced pricing and packaging strategies. This is a topic I love and have had a lot of experience with. If you're a SaaS or AI company, you're definitely going to want to tune into this one. Let's do it.
Pricing.
Racist.
CMO Pro.
Hey guys, Bill Messias here. I'm the former CMO of Slack, CMO of Zendesk, and SVP of Marketing at Salesforce. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is pricing and packaging. I nerd out on this stuff. I love it. My mission here at SaaS CMO Pro is to help educate marketers, VCs, CEOs on modern SaaS and AI marketing.
Forget everything you think you know.
And I think that pricing and packaging is a really critical part of this, right? I work with a lot of different companies now. I kind of serve as a board advisor or independent board member. If there's one thing that I found that will really move the needle, it's pricing and packaging. A lot of times we're doing 1,000 different things. Maybe in marketing, we're doing, 50 different channels, 50 different tactics. But like pricing and packaging is one of those things that I've seen absolutely alter that growth trajectory, absolutely alter that awareness of the company, the brand of the company. So much of this comes down to these philosophical decisions on how we price and package. It's an area too that surprisingly, a lot of times when I engage or start working with a company and helping them out, pricing and packaging was kind of decided right when they started and no one's ever looked at it since. No one on the marketing team owns it or is in charge of it. It's a little bit ambiguous, right? Does finance own that? Does sales own that? Does marketing own that? Does product own that? It's one of those gray areas where I think because no one knows who owns it, no one owns it.
Not mine. It's not.
And whatever you have tends to be inertia. It just stays there, right? So, I think it's a great opportunity to explore your current pricing and packaging. Hopefully you'll learn a couple things today, things you can try, or at least, start asking about it, because this is just like, again, I've seen it can really move the needle. Whether it's SaaS or AI, you've got a lot of different models. You can do per seat, you can do usage-based pricing, or UBP. There's a lot of different models out there. I think one thing I would caution you on is just be a little careful about choosing a totally new model that no one has ever heard or had experience with. You may choose the perfect model, and maybe you have, Nostradamus, you're like, I know this is absolutely perfect. But a lot of times when it comes down to pricing too, is you want to have simplicity.
Keep it simple.
It's one of the key things I'll ask people when we're talking about this topic is like, hey, just explain your pricing and packaging to me. If it takes longer than 60 seconds to explain, and if I'm not getting it right away, someone that's been in the SaaS space for 15 years, that's probably an issue, right? Because your prospects are also probably going to have some of the same questions like, wait, how does it work? Or what's happening here? So I do think starting from a base of usage-based pricing or per seat pricing is helpful just because people kind of get familiar with it, right? Same thing when you're naming your plans. You don't want to, this is not the time to really venture off into a totally new naming set. There's very classic, if you're doing per seat and you have multiple plans, you'll generally see a starter, a professional, an enterprise plan. That's great. Just go to hey, what are some of the top 10 most popular SaaS companies? Look at how they name their plans. And I would argue that's the one area, just use what they're doing, right? You create a level of familiarity. You kind of get a feel for that. Simplicity is just really important. It's an area that you don't want to overlook. Okay, so with all that said, I do think though that pricing and packaging is one of those areas that there are innovations coming out. You don't want to be necessarily afraid to use an innovation. You still want to think about what is the core set framework that aligns to what people are used to, but there's still a lot of little innovations that you can do to kind of take you further.
So we could make it better?
So the first one I'm going to talk about something we did at Slack. So we had what was called a fair billing policy. I did an entire separate video on it, but at a high level, what it was is that we said, hey, you're only going to get charged if you're actually using the product. Now, this was different, right? If you look at historical on-prem, that's not how it worked. When they sold on-prem software to enterprises, you would, get 6, 7, 8-figure deals, but it was not based on if people were using it. SaaS started to move in that direction, right? You started to see per seat billing, but a lot of times you would sign up, especially at the enterprise level, for a year or 2 year, whatever it was, and you had a fixed number of seats, regardless of those people use it or not. So when we started Slack, we said, hey, what if someone stops using it, we would give credits or refunds back to the company. What ended up happening was it created a ton of goodwill because you had these admins. A lot of times, our accounts, we were more of a see and grow motion. So you would start with a small usage, a pocket there. We had a policy, I think it was 10 or 14 days, where basically if you were inactive for 10 or 14 days, we would start giving credits and refunds back. We'd send a notice to the admin and be like, hey, Sally has not been using Slack for the last, 14 days, we're going to give you a prorated credit for, what you're being charged for that seat.
I'm going to destroy his file and refund his money.
A really cool thing about that is it aligned customers' value to our value. In other words, we had to make sure that, hey, if people aren't using the product, we're not getting paid, right? So, both of our goals were aligned. We have to make value. We have to make sure these people are actually engaged. And we would measure that through daily active users or weekly active users, but it definitely aligned there. And that was a simple, small one, but it's amazing how it changes the culture of your company, right? When you know that, you're not getting paid unless people are using the product, it makes you think about it a lot differently. It's not just, let's roll out new features. It's let's make sure, the product's actually easy to use. How is onboarding? How can we reduce friction, right? It just puts you in more of a PLG type mindset, which I think is really important for your long-term growth. Okay, so kind of continuing on here, what are some other advanced pricing and packaging strategies that you may want to consider? So the second one that I would say is consider embracing freemium. I know for a lot of people, that's a scary topic. Freemium, oh my God, we can't do that. We're going to give the product away, Sales, it's going to cause issues with our pipeline and no one's going to want to buy one of our paid plans. And finance is oh my God, support costs and bandwidth costs, and how are we going to afford this?
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
I gotta say, from doing freemium plans, literally at almost every single company I've been with for the last 25 years, that at least for me, it's worked, and it's worked really well.
What will you do without freedom?
The basic idea behind freemium, and I did an entire separate video on it. If you want to geek out on freemium, watch that. So I'll put the link in the description below. The entire idea with freemium is that you're tapping into your evangelists. Basic idea is in a marketing team, you may have 5 people on your marketing team, 10, 50, 100, depending on, the size of your company. But when you have a free plan, what ends up happening is you end up having 10,000 free users, 100,000 free users. At Slack, we had millions of free users. And the way to philosophically think about it is you're hey, I just got 1 million more marketers on my team, right? These are people that are out there, they're talking about your product, they're recommending your product. Oh yeah, you guys gotta check out Slack. Oh, you totally should use Zendesk. I love them, right? When you don't have a free plan, you lose out on all that free marketing, really. And what it comes down to, a lot of time free plans too is most embraced by the SMB, small, medium-sized business. And I would make an argument that philosophically, you're not going to make as much money on the SMBs as you will the enterprise, but you need the SMBs for your growth engine. That's a really important part of how you're going to grow, because there's just a lot of SMBs out there, right? And people switch jobs, they take tech with them, they're working in SMB, all of a sudden they move to mid-market or enterprise, and they're oh my God, we were using Zendesk or Slack or Sales or whatever it was, right? And they take it with them. That's really, really powerful for you. You also would find too, is with Freemium, people will upgrade, right? And a lot of this, it gets back to what we talked about, pricing and packaging, right? The whole part of this video. If you create the right types of incentives for people to move up.
You think you could call Nate to get us an upgrade?
They're much more likely going to convert into one of those paid plans. And although industry average is 1 to 5%, I've seen it personally where you can get far higher than that. Now you have to set it up, and that's going to be talking about the next most important advanced strategy for pricing and packaging. So the third advanced strategy is thresholds. So what the heck are thresholds? Okay, so thresholds is this idea when you're doing pricing and packaging where a lot of people or companies will default to presenting their pricing plan where they'll have multiple plans, but everything is differentiated based off features. So on the starter plan, you get these 3 features. On the professional plan, you get these 5 additional features. On the enterprise plan, you get these additional 6 features, whatever it is, right? What ends up happening when you go down that route is you tend to get kind of a crappy first plan, right? Because they just can't do a lot, right? You kind of call crippleware, it's just you go in and you only have access to a couple things and everything else is blocked off, and it's kind of a gunky UI experience. It's just hard to get around. It's a little bit confusing. And what ends up happening there is you don't get as much value, right? So I'm a big believer with product-led growth. A key tenet there is you want to reduce friction, but you also want to increase value. You want to get as much value as you can, as quick as you can. They talk about that, time to value, right? So when you have a very limited first plan, you're not getting much value. It is what it is. There's a very limited amount of features. It's kind of crippled. You're just not getting a lot of value. And the tenet in my mind behind pricing and packaging, when you get people to buy from you, is you want to have as much value as you can before the purchase decision. That's really important. Let me say it again. You want to have as much value as you can before the actual purchase decision.
You lure them in close to you, you look them in the eye, you smack them down.
So when you look at something like that, you're going to start evaluating like, hey, what if we did open up more of these features, right? Like what if we had more features, or just basically opening up that plan so people could get more usage out of it, right? And by having more usage, they're more likely going to convert. They're more likely going to upgrade to that plan. So what thresholds, basically, the idea here is that you'll say like, hey, for whatever the feature is, we're going to give you X amount of usage of it, right? Before some threshold kicks in, like that you need to upgrade to the next tier. And by doing this, you can start to have a lot more of your features, I would argue even all your features, exposed to that first plan, exposed to either the freemium plan, or if you don't have a freemium plan, even exposed to your starter plan. So for as practical examples, like, right, at Slack, we would go, hey, you get up to, I think it was 5 integrations on the free plan. Above that, you need to upgrade to one of our other plans. And which is cool, because like when you start using Slack, there's a couple like, oh, we use, Salesforce or HubSpot or Giphy ended up being our most popular integration because people like to have fun with their software. I've done a separate video on that. But you want to have this idea of like, people would start using it and, lightly, okay, I'm going to set up a couple integrations. But then down the road, if they start using it much more intensively, you're like, whoa, I want to get like a lot more of these integrations going, right?
I like it. I like it. I like it.
But they were at least exposed to that feature. Another key example that we did, so this was at Slack, is we had a 10,000 message limit, essentially a 10,000 message threshold. And the idea there was you would have up to 10,000 messages in your team. So our average team size in the beginning was like 20 people, right? Very like land and expand. Some early adopter would bring it in and they create a team and they start messaging each other. And the idea is we would say like, hey, the first 10,000 messages you get, after that point, we are going to start historically deleting the oldest message, right? So you can only have 10,000 at one time. And it was kind of like a rolling level of messages.
And no more.
And no more.
I thought like that was a really important criteria and threshold that we set for a couple of reasons I'll go into. First was that criteria was set at a 20-person team sending out, 10,000 messages. On average, they would hit that threshold at about 6 months. Now that's very different than a lot of purchase decision moments that a lot of SaaS or AI companies will use. In other words, they will set that threshold very early. Like they will, almost like they'll use like a free trial, right? Like you have 7 days to use it. Well, think about it. You have a 7-day threshold. How much value have you gotten in that 7 days? Like you've probably you're interested. All right, I'm going to check this one out. I'm going to use it at 15 minutes. Oh, I got to go to my next meeting. Fire came up, blah, blah, blah. Maybe use it once or twice in that 7 days. And then it's like, hey, you can't use it anymore. Sales is, are you ready to buy it? You got to buy it. You got to buy it. You have very little value. So conversely, you have very small conversion rates, either in a self-service model, or if it is a sales model, it's going to be a longer deal cycle just because, they barely use it. They barely even got any value out of it. In fact, if anything, you could argue like, hey, I got very little value. Like, why would I buy it, right? So by setting that threshold, that message threshold at 6 months, now it's like you get, a lot of value. Would you like to upgrade to one of our, our premium plans, our professional plan, our enterprise plan, whatever it is? A lot of value. Self-service, much higher conversions. Sales assisted, much higher conversions, right? Because these people have already used it. They're starting to love it. You start to have evangelists there. They're getting a lot out of it. They're using the software much more. Over 6 months, they learn much more. Another thing that happened to us, so anyone that's used Slack or MS Teams or just any messaging services, you'll realize as compared to email, which is inherently opaque and it goes away when someone leaves the organization, you don't have access to that knowledge. When a messaging-based system, that's really important. The more you use it, the more you're I use search a lot more, right? What did we say back then? Or what happened? And you want to find out about all that older stuff, right? But you kind of only discover that till later in, 5 months, 6 months in. And so it was set in a way that allowed you to dually, you had gotten a lot of value, and also you had really discovered the value of the platform and the value of historical search. And hey, no longer are you going to be able to kind of find those older ones. The last thing that I thought that was really important, that decision on 10,000, was that we had a freemium model, which I love freemium. Again, if you kind of look at it as we had 1 million marketers out there, doing their job for us, doing it in some cases better than we can, right? Because people you always believe your friend and colleague more than you're going to believe an ad, or you're going to believe a piece of content or brochureware that some company wrote up on why they're awesome. You're always going to believe those people. And so with a lot of these plans, if you're SaaS or AI, when you put something like, a hard limit, like, hey, when you hit this time, you can no longer use the product. Or in our case, like, hey, 10,000 message, we could say like, hey, when you hit 10,000 message in 6 months, you got to make a decision to buy or you can't use it anymore. But essentially what that would have meant is, hey, we are firing 1 million marketers. We're letting them all go.
I'm fired.
Yes, you're fired.
These free marketers that we had that are generating so much awareness, so much value. A lot of them are upgrading on their own. We're saying that, hey, that you no longer get to use those. Okay, well, as a marketer, then you go, all right, well, I need more budget, right? Like, I need budget to run more events. I need budget to hire a PR retainer. I need more budget to create content. I need more budget to run ads and offline campaigns. And those are pretty damn expensive, right?
I need more money.
Not saying you shouldn't do those. They have their place and they can help accelerate the growth. But when you have this healthy base of people just talking about you and recommending you, you don't want to just like say, get out of here, adios, amigo. That is not very cool, right? So setting these thresholds, I really recommend thinking about things like, hey, can we set a threshold, but it doesn't mean they can no longer use, our service anymore, our software, or can we set it to maybe it updates, right? So maybe it's like you have a feature and hey, you can use this feature up to 3 times a year or 3 times a month or whatever it is, right? Just think about when you're setting these thresholds, again, try to think about how you can open it up to more, open up your features, right? And think about like how you can set those further back. For established companies, it's hard to do this, right? Because like, whoa, like 6 months, like what's going to happen to our revenue in that 6 months, right? And sometimes there is a little bit of delay, right? Because you're pushing more value before you're forcing purchase decision. But especially if you're early on, if you're an AI company that's just starting, you're thinking about your pricing, this is the perfect time to set it, right? Like have a little bit more long-term thinking. And if you're a CEO or if you're a VC, you're on these boards, give them that, like have them think about long-term, right? Like give them an opportunity to build a go-to-market model that's fundamentally can help them grow more faster, more capital efficient. That's what we want, right? But a lot of times, so many of these decisions are, we have to get everything improved in 2 weeks. And so all the decisions are in these little 2-week, no one's looking long run. No one's thinking about, hey, how can we set up pricing and packaging to set us up for the long run?
Well, I'm sorry I can't be more optimistic, Doctor, but we have a long road ahead of us.
All right, so let's move on. The 4th advanced pricing and packaging strategy for SaaS or AI companies that I've used in the past, I think it's really helpful, is when you have these multiple plans. Let's say you're going down a per user path and you have a starter plan, a professional plan, an enterprise plan. As we talked about last time, it inherently works better when you open up more of those features to everyone. And you can set up thresholds, that's going to work. Another alternative, or something that I found works really well, is to basically this idea of like you open up almost all the features, but the enterprise requirements are what you get in these upgraded plans. So what do I mean by upgraded requirements? So for instance, if you are an enterprise, from a security standpoint, having like single sign-on is really important for you. Single sign-on, 2-factor auth, that's a big one, right? You as an enterprise, you may really need an SLA that says you're going to have 99.99% uptime. As an enterprise, you may really need a dedicated customer success manager. You may really want 1-hour response times. You may really want provisioning and deprovisioning of users, right? As people come on, they automatically get added. When people leave, they automatically don't have access to the software. And sometimes it's really important from a compliance perspective, right? It's like we had compliance exports, right? Sometimes people get sued and you have to, find these messages. Well, that's something you got on the enterprise plan. There are all these like enterprise requirements that you need as an enterprise or a larger business that aren't really features, right? Like someone going into Slack, that's not really a feature per se that the average user is using, but is really important, right? If you're an enterprise. So again, it's a different way. Like this kind of fits into the whole product-led growth mantra of you want to have activity, you want to have usage, you want to reduce friction. Well, pricing and packaging is a massive area where friction is introduced. And when you unlock that friction, when people can come in and just start using your software, and that's big, that's a short sentence, right? When people come in and just start using your software, well, okay, when people come in, do you have a free plan? Can people come in? Like, are you reducing friction, right? Is the only way you sell your software is top down? Enterprise top down, long deal cycles, right? Wall-to-wall type deals, very rare, it's just hard to get those. Or do you have a pricing and packaging model that opens it up, right? Like anyone can start, they heard about it, they can come in, they can start using it. You're following PLG tenants, right? They're getting value quickly. it's simple to use, it's fun to use. That's so important for you. And by thinking about the enterprise requirements, you've basically monetized in a way that people get this value, and you're using smart thresholds. Don't do thresholds everywhere. Think about like, hey, maybe what's one or two really key features that you think you could leverage that on in a smart way that's delayed, so they get a lot of value. But then by having those enterprise requirements, you allow it to spread, right? Like it's moving within this organization. A big company starts using you, it's a small team, then all of a sudden another team starts using you, another team starts using you, another team starts using you.
Spreading all over the place.
That's really powerful. And at some point, from an enterprise perspective, they're gonna wanna like, hey, like we gotta get everybody on single sign-on. Like we need admin controls. That's another awesome enterprise requirement, right? You don't want every single team having a different security setting, right? You want a general admin that can control all these different teams, right? The message retention policy, the security policies, whatever it is, right? So those enterprise requirements are a really sneaky way. Like I think it's a great way to get more widespread adoption. And it was definitely something I think helped us in the past. Okay, so the fifth advanced pricing packaging strategy that I've seen that works really well is having a concept of an ELA, or an enterprise license agreement. We talked about before, right? How, in these enterprises, you want to reduce friction. You want to allow someone to come in, start using it, start getting some value, start talking about it internally. You want to have a system that allows your software to invite others within the organization really easily and allow those people to join and reduce friction, get value quickly, right? Like those are all the ingredients. You're making your stew, and those are the things that are going to help you grow really fast within an organization. Well, at some point, like again, you're going to have these different stakeholders within the company, legal, IT, compliance, line of business, where you're going to be talking to them about, hey, a larger rollout deal. And what does that look like, right? You're probably not getting to the point where you have 100% usage of all these small teams. At some point, some, threshold, they'll say like, all right, 20% of our users are using it. Okay, we want to roll it out to a larger portion, but we're not sure how much to roll it out to, right? Like ideally, yes, everyone rolls it out to the entire company, but sometimes you're not going to get that. And so kind of a creative way that I've seen ELAs used before is you will say, okay, let's say this company has 100,000 people, big company, and let's say 1,000 people are using your software. So you write up the ELA in a way that you say, hey, okay, this first year, you're only going to get charged for those 1,000 people, but we're going to let it so anyone else in the company can use it if they want to try it out, right? And at the end of the next year, we will only bill you for how many people are actively using it, right? Now, this is kind of like getting back to that fair billing policy I talked about in the beginning, right? This idea of aligning charging for usage based on, are people actually using it? Are people getting value, right? Because I think like a lot of people, especially in the enterprise, have been burned where they bought these tools, no one ends up using them, right? And it ended up being a very expensive proposition. Well, this strategy kind of aligns and says, hey, if people are using it and they're getting value, great. We will, level up to whatever that amount is. So kind of going back to that example, first year, 1,000 people are using it, 100,000 person company, you say, hey, anyone can use it in the company. Now you've reduced friction, key PLG concept. Now let's say 10,000 people are using it. Like it's starting to spread, just like it started to spread when it was a free plan. It's starting to spread even in a more, they're on the enterprise plan, but you're letting that spread within the organization.
Now we're talking.
So at the end of year 2, same thing. You say, okay, great. 10,000 people are using it. Now we're going to, send you a bill for 10,000. But by the way, this next year, anyone in the company can use it again. Same concept. Okay, that year ends. Now 50,000 people are using it. Right? So basically, like for that next year, that second year, they were only charged for 10,000 people, but really 50,000 people used it. Now you can go, all right, there's implications of that. Like there's cash flow considerations. There's, hey, basically 40,000 people were using the product for free, right? So, okay, what are the bandwidth? What are the support costs? You're incurring some costs here, but again, it's a long-term strategy. It's one where you're getting more people engaged and getting value, and then the purchase decision comes and it's in the future. So again, get 50,000 and then same thing, it grows, and eventually you get everyone on it.
Our mission is over. Let's head back to base.
It's one of those areas where, again, like a lot of companies will come in and just have no usage at all and try to sell top down and just, hey, by the way, you have 100,000 people, you buy our software for all 100,000 people to use. You can imagine like why that's a long deal cycle, why that takes a year, 2 years, 3 years, and why that doesn't happen that often, and why you need just like these Herculean, incredible sales efforts to close those. Whereas you can see in the other model, again, it kind of gets back to PLG tenants, right? Like land and expand, seed and grow. You start small, you start these usage pockets, and you encourage them to get bigger, and you reduce friction, right? Whether on the free plan, whether in the enterprise plan, you're constantly thinking about how to reduce friction. Okay, so one last thing that you can try is number 6, kind of advanced pricing and packaging strategy for SaaS AI companies that are thinking about how they're going to price their products is credits. Credits I found have been very effective for incentivizing people, and same thing, reducing friction. So for instance, Slack, we had a give 100, get 100. And the base idea was like, when you got someone else to come in and start using Slack, you got 100 credits. They also got 100 credits to start. And what we would do is we would also have different elements you could do as you were like going through the sign-up process. Sometimes like for instance, like we were trying to really nail down our value proposition. So we wanted to find out like, hey, why did you sign up for Slack? Like, what was the first primary reason? Like we were kind of refining our messaging. We wanted that as a data point. So as opposed to just saying like forcing everyone to fill out a survey, which creates friction, we said like, hey, you can get an additional 50 credits, right? If you fill out the survey. And a lot of people would. And then we put like literally in the software, like, hey, you have X amount of credits based on this many people on the team. You can upgrade and try our starter plan, our professional plan, whatever it is. And you'll have enough credits for 3.2 months. Whatever it was, right? And again, you're just kind of reducing friction there. You're making it easier then to experience, what the next plan up is, reducing friction for people that are trying to like, oh, this is kind of a cool thing that we can put in here. So I found credits also be another effective method for growth.
The beauty of our system is that we all win.
So look, at the end of the day, let's sum up. With pricing and packaging, I've been doing this a long time, whether in marketing and leadership roles, for all these different internet companies, both B2C, B2B. I found of all the different projects, trust me, we've done tons and tons of projects, and I've seen this, I've worked with other companies. Pricing and packaging is the one that will absolutely move the needle the most, right? It is something that is so important. I tell a lot of companies, like, especially if you're a little further along, like hire someone that all they do is pricing and packaging. From an organizational perspective, if you're a CEO, say, hey, this person is in charge of it, right? Don't have it be ambiguous and gray and just means like any pricing charge. I've seen this with other companies who are like, well, we want to do that, but like, I don't know what, finance is going to say or sales, and it's fine. You still need to loop in those stakeholders, but put someone that's like in charge of it, right? So you can start iterating and at least you can start testing, right? I remember Zendesk, we did tons of pricing tests, measuring kind of demand elasticity and at these different price points. And we learned a lot, but we did that because like, I was in charge. I could do it. It was like, okay, Bill's testing these different things out. Now, of course, I would let the different teams know about it, but one person or at least one team was kind of, nominated with that.
They do what I tell them to do.
Pricing and packaging is just something that can move the needle. You want to make sure these things are simple, easy to understand. Don't go too crazy, right? Whatever it is, you should be able to explain in under a minute, and the person goes, oh, okay, I kind of get that. Think about, especially if you're embracing PLG, product-led growth, which I love. I've done a whole set of videos on that. You can check those out. Think about, how you can reduce friction in this. Think about, whether it's freemium, free trial, think about how many of your features are currently gated. Do you have crippleware right now? Are you making things simple and easy to use? Think about more advanced ones for the enterprise. You talk about ELAs, fair billing policy. There's a lot of like things, and there's other great ones out there. I do not profess to corner the market on advanced pricing and packaging strategies. There's so many good ones that are out there, and this is the evolution. This is why like I love what I do, is because I'm super passionate about go-to-market. I love it. I literally nerd out on this stuff.
I know that sounds silly, but it's my favorite thing to do.
It's super fun, and go-to-market is always evolving. And so, if you are a founder of a SaaS or AI company, and maybe came from the product side, just as like, from a product perspective, you're training LMs, you just know there's so much that's evolving and it's advancing. You have to stay on top of it. It's the same thing with the go-to-market, right? You cannot adopt a 30-year-old dusty playbook that worked 30 years ago, and how they priced and packaged back then. Like, it's just, it's constantly evolving. It's constantly having more innovations. So embrace that, right? Embrace that, bring in someone that's passionate about it, that can help out there. I think you're going to see a huge impact. I've seen it wherever I've been, like when we really nailed the pricing and packaging. Oh my God, that helps so much with our growth, so much with our revenue, so much with our monetization.
It saved us.
Really enjoyed talking with you guys today. I'd love to hear from you. What is your advanced pricing and packaging strategy? Put in the comments below. I love reading these. I'm constantly learning. And thanks again for joining SaaS CMO Pro. Hey guys, one last thing. So if you like this video, if you want to see more of them, head on over to SaaSCMOpro.com today. That's my official website. You're going to find there my full library of videos. You can sign up, get notified, be the first to watch new videos as they drop. Next, I've had a lot of people ask me, hey Bill, what camera do you use? What microphone do you use? So I've got a full list of all the equipment that I use on the website there. I found for me that really helps improve the professionalism for a lot of these Zoom and Hangout calls that I have with my clients. It took me like 2,000 hours to research all this stuff, so you can just skip to the end, find out what equipment I used. Hopefully that's helpful. And lastly, if you are a founder or CEO and you're kind of curious, like, hey, what does a board advisor engagement looks like if you wanted to work together? Again, feel free to go to the website there, SaaSCMOpro.com. It's got all the information on how I structure those engagements as well as how to reach me. So anyways, you guys have a wonderful rest of the day and Carpe diem.